Well, last week when we were here, we were talking about this particular truck, about removing the leaf springs and matter of dropping down the rear end to replace them and put new springs in. So I'm going to let Ed tell you a little bit more.
All right, Barry. So yeah, as you can imagine, a typical fire truck is pretty heavy, and usually their springs sit pretty close to maximum capacity most of the time. So they don't last forever. But what happened is like I showed you last week, that these springs were sagging, they weren't holding up. So the process here is that these springs, like the one that's missing here, are held on with big giant U-bolts, and you could see. So we have a drive shaft up there that had to get disconnected. So disconnect the drive shaft, torch off all the U-bolts, drop this whole thing down to the ground. We'll move our lifts out of the way like we have here, and we could actually take this whole mechanism if we wanted to. And if we wanted to roll it one way or the other, we could. And we can roll it anywhere we want, get it out of the way. And then when the new springs get here, which I believe they may have actually pulled in, we will essentially rebuild this from the top down, putting up the new springs, new pins, new bushings. Once those are done, we'll hang new U-bolts, and then this whole axle assembly will get lifted back up into place. U-bolts will get tightened up. Things will get checked for alignment. Reinstall the drive shaft, all the brake lines and hoses and fuel lines, and that'll be that. And this thing will be back on the road. They got about a day and a half to get these out. Day and a half, day and 3/4, which isn't too bad. Some trucks should take you a day, some trucks should take you 2.5 days. Kind of depends on what you're getting into. But this one, not too bad.
No, because it's like I said, it's not like a passenger car where you got hydraulic brakes or anything like that. It's just a matter of your air hoses, like you say, your U-bolts, drive shaft.
Yep.
And basically it's just dropping it right down, because it's so much easier than you trying to replace those springs up in the truck.
Yeah. Well,
I have done them where you had a bare chassis is one thing. I could do it. I've done it with a forklift. But in this case here, this is really the only way of doing.
And you're old enough, Barry. You've bench pressed.
Oh, I've been, believe me, my age.
And that's not a dig. That's a compliment.
Well, I appreciate that.
Sure. But I mean, it is different from, say, your average Chevy pickup, or the old C10 square bodies or what have you, that you might try to do something like this in your garage. Not anymore. That's just asking for hurt.
Yep.
So we use the right tools, and we take all the right precautions to do it right, get it done safe, get it done as fast as we can, get the truck back to the customer rolling down the road.
Yep. There you go.
That's
Simple as that.
Glad you guys watched.
Thanks again for watching, and again,
like and subscribe to Barry's channel.
There you go. I love that. How you doing? We're back again at Eddie Boughton for E.J. Boughton Fire Apparatus and Repair in North Branford, Connecticut. And tell us what we're going to do today.
All right, Barry. So here's the deal. Part of the fire service is making sure that when somebody picks up the phone and calls 911, that a working apparatus gets there to put the fire out, right? So part of the routine maintenance that we do on these trucks is every year we do what's called a certification pump test on it. And basically what we're doing is we're going to go ahead and operate this truck as if we were pumping water at a fire scene. And we're going to do it to a set of specifications that is actually every fire truck has a little performance plate on here.
Yep.
And what the plate tells us is how many gallons of water do we have to move at a certain pressure at a certain RPM. And based on our results, we could say, yes, this truck's doing its job, or we'll say no, and you need your check pump. Those are the two options there.
Also, another thing too, it's not that you do, but another thing that has to be done every year is hose testing. Hose testing, where they have to run a certain amount of pressure on all their live lines to make sure that you're not going to have any breaks in the lines, anything like that, because any failure could be catastrophic.
Right. Most of the stuff is tested probably to a 4-to-1 safety ratio. So if the normal operating pressure of a hose is, say, 100 pounds, usually it's tested to 400 pounds. Is that about right, Greg?
Somewhere around there, yeah.
And same thing with the ladder truck. When this thing gets tested, they will extend it out all the way and hang upwards of 1,000 pounds off the end of it for a specific amount of time and make sure that it rebounds the way it should and doesn't break or what have you. So what we're going to do is I'll start this up and I'll go through the process. What we have to do first, before we can flow any water through a water pump, we have to get the air out.
Yep.
So the first part of this process is we're gonna prime the pump, we're gonna evacuate the air out of it, and once we have actual water flowing, then we'll adjust the gauges accordingly and adjust the flow rates until we know for certain if we're meeting the expectations of the manufacturer. And normally this is a pretty well documented paper trail on this,
Yes.
which I'm gonna spare everybody because you don't want to see me stand here with a clipboard. And I don't want to do it. So we're just going to go through the process for the sake of going through, but we will make sure that.
But also too is we're just using this truck as a test.
We are.
That's it. This is not in service. This is just for a test.
So this is my personal fire truck.
Yeah, well, I think we talked about this last week, and
Yeah.
like I said, but it still operates.
So last week you saw it. This week we're going to make sure it works. All right.
Awesome.
So we'll
Go
right
for
now.
it.
All right.
without getting wet, by the way. That's the nature of the system. So that's the pressure we're looking for, and that's the amount of flow we're looking for. And now it's a lot easier. vent it off so that it doesn't blow up. Otherwise, we're making a god awful mess. But that's it. So we know now that this truck can do what it's supposed to do, the way it's supposed to do it, and we can sign off on that, hand it back to the customer, and basically that's it. Thank you. Yeah.
Well, that was pretty cool.
That's a success. And I will tell everybody that it seems really cool, and it is cool, and it never really gets old.
No.
Until you do about 250 in a year.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of them, man.
Yeah. Well, we need to explain a little bit where you're at a scene, and also is the fact that when you're drawing water from either a lake, pond, swimming pool, or portable tank when they're doing tanker shuttles.
Yeah, well, a lot of people don't realize that most of the water that gets used in firefighting does not come out of a fire hydrant. In fact, in Connecticut, don't quote me on any of this, I could be wrong, but less than 30%, I believe, of the land by volume is covered by fire hydrants. So basically, you have a 70% chance that you're going to rely on some sort of static water source like a pond or a holding tank or a tanker truck that's going to bring you water, in which case, in fact, do we still have a tanker truck here? No, I think I brought it home this morning. At any rate, it's a tanker truck's filled with water. And what they do nowadays is this giant tanker truck will show up at a scene. Your house is on fire. This truck's feeding water to that fire. And as this vehicle is running out of water, the guys operating the tanker truck will have set up what's called a portable pond. And what they'll do is on the side of the truck where we have one of these large suction hoses, they will set up this pond and they will dump a load of tank water into it. And this apparatus that's defending the fire will use the water that's in that portable pond just the way we did out of a tank in the ground. And what they'll do is as soon as that tanker drives away, that tanker will go to fill itself up another tank of water from whatever source they've already predetermined. In the meantime, you may have a tanker truck from another town coming in, known as mutual aid, that's coming and ideally would unload their water into that same portable tank before you consumed it all. And it's a pretty well-oiled machine. I personally haven't done any tanker shuttles like that in a long time. My assistant, Greg, here has done it numerous times. And I don't know if you want to tell us a little bit about some of the logistics there.
Yeah, so there's a lot to it. It's not just, you set up this pond and then you just, have these trucks come and everything. There's a sequence of like, where are you going to get the water from? How are you going to get it? Are you going to use a hydrant? Are you going to fill these trucks from another pond further down or something like that? And it's kind of just makes a revolving circle and goes around, and tankers just basically, once you get enough from mutual aid, you just make a train and you fill up the thing. And once the tank's getting empty, you fill it. And that's pretty much it.
And these guys, and these guys will train often,
Yes.
to a point where they'll set up a scenario where they require a certain amount of water to not stop flowing, like what we had here in the test pit. Let's say it's 1,000 gallons a minute, which is an awful lot of water to consume, but you need it. So these guys will train in such a fashion as to try and see if they can maintain that 1,000 gallon a minute flow of water without ever running out of water
for a certain amount of time.
For a certain length of
There's
time.
an actual number for that, and it's, I don't know if it's 1,000 gallons or 1,500 or whatever, to maintain that amount of water flowing for a certain period of time, for like an hour or
But also too, it's like how many gallons on a normal tanker will be.
So nowadays they're normally around probably 2,500 to 3,000. But a lot of people are going to 3,000 just to have the little extra.
Yeah.
So you get a decent amount of water, but when you have an incident, you need a lot of water.
You need a lot of water.
Even like here in town in North Branford, they have 3 tankers. They have one in each district: District 1, District 2, District 3. So there's 3 there. So even with that, depending on your situation, you could probably do it. But sometimes this is where we have to get mutual aid from other towns, depending on where we don't have a water source.
Exactly. And it really just comes down to training, and some departments can train in these exercises so well that they actually can get the same insurance rating and benefits of having a hydrant system in their town without having to go through the expense of, putting in a hydrant system, and sometimes you're just not plausible in any sense. But and speaking of hydrants, just so for those who don't know, when you're drafting like we did here, you're essentially sucking water up from somewhere. And when you are using hydrant, this like you see on the side of the road, that is pressure that's supplied by the water company, and you're not sucking water out of the hydrant. The hydrant is pushing water into your truck. And they're under, depending on where you are, 50 to 100 pounds of water. And essentially that water is, coming out of some lake somewhere down the road as well.
Because also too, if I'm not mistaken, depending on hydrant location, you may have to get in touch with water company if they have to increase it.
Yeah.
Depending on where it is and what you're actually doing.
Yes, but some of the further ones you may have to call. There's additional pumps and stuff that you can turn on to keep the pressure going.
Because you stop and look at it. There's a lot to it. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, we take a lot for granted when we flush that toilet.
Yes.
I hope Barry, that answered that question.
I think that did. We did very well.
Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate you being here.
Yeah.
And I just want to say again, thank you, Ed, for letting us be here. This was very informative. Also, too, is to remember to like and subscribe to this channel.
Amen.